Am I the jerk for refusing to pay for my sister-in-law's surgery with my college funds? I started investing from an extremely young age, probably around middle school. I was doing those stock simulators from elementary school, and once I was able to turn a profit in the simulation over a 2-year period, my parents started trusting me with real money. I started off with $15,000. I have been fortunate enough to turn a significant profit on that money. My parents increased the money they allowed me to invest as they saw that I was serious. The money that is now tied up in stocks is enough to pay for my college. A large percentage of it has simply increased in value due to my investment, however, ultimately, it was my parents' money that I invested. This money is now what I'm using to pay for college, and things have been on track financially up until now. However, my husband's sister is now having to get surgery on her knee, and it's taking a big toll on their side of the family financially. My husband revealed that my investments have made me a lot of money, probably to give his sister advice on how she might be able to pay for her surgery, but now their family is asking me to pay for it altogether. Their argument is that I didn't actually earn my money and simply got lucky. Whenever I tell them that I did have to work hard and learn how to invest, they say, well, if you're so good at it, just invest more money to pay for your tuition and use the current funds for your sister-in-law's surgery. However, I don't want to, for the simple reason that I see it as my money, and I don't want to share. I know this is petty, but I feel like that money should be mine for me to spend on my college. However, my husband is putting a lot of pressure on me to change my mind. What do you think? What's your naughtiest story from rehab? My parents sent me to rehab when I was in my 20s. Basically, the rules in rehab were extremely strict. Girls and guys were kept in separate residential areas, though we were allowed to mingle with each other in the afternoons in a common, supervised area. However, we were severely limited in what we had access to. We weren't allowed to have perfume, deodorant, or even razors, which meant that we girls were often a little smelly, and nothing was ever shaved. Obviously, this created a huge underground market of sorts where you would try to get restricted materials by doing favors for people. For me, the thing that I most desperately wanted was antiperspirant. I felt sticky without it, but despite begging every authority and manager I could find, no one authorized me to have any. I knew that one guy had men's antiperspirant, though, so, during our common time, I asked what I could do to get a few sprays every day. At first, he refused to give me any at all, denying that he even had access to it. However, as I got closer to his friends, he opened up to me. He was willing to give it to me in exchange for some junk jewelry that I still had on me. However, he was really hesitant about the whole thing. He was adamant that I didn't need it, and even after we made our bargain, he kept asking me not to wear it. That's when I learned that he had a thing for natural pheromones or whatever, and that he actually really liked the way girls naturally smelled in rehab. It was a surprisingly flattering discovery, because it allowed me to feel like I was actually desired for the first time since I was checked in. What followed were some fun times where he proved that he meant what he said to me, and although I still wore the antiperspirant for comfort, it was nice to know that someone like me natural.
Dead name me in the workplace? I'll expose you back. I'm a trans man, and I transitioned a long time ago, well before I started working at my current company. However, in this company, there's one woman who considers herself a gossip expert. Her name is Stella. I mostly ignored Stella, up until she pulled up to my cubicle with a really arrogant smile a few days ago. I immediately knew something was up, and that's when she leaned over and whispered my dead name to me. I was stunned and more than a little caught off guard at the unprofessionalism. Apparently, this woman had stalked my social media and had discovered in an old tagged post of mine that I used to present as a girl. For what it's worth, I knew I was trans for a long time, and I was male even before my official transition. Stella finding that picture should have been meaningless, and I told her so, except for the fact that she decided to take advantage of what she knew to spread that news across the office. Obviously, I was hurt and upset. No one ever had an inkling that I was trans, and I was really good at dodging all questions about my childhood. In the span of a single afternoon, Stella ruined all that. Beyond complaining to human resources, I knew that I wanted to make Stella's life miserable in return for what she did to me. So, I decided to give her a taste of her own medicine. I started stalking her social media obsessively. I live with 3 other guys, and I got them to help me track down all the information we could on this witch. That's when one of my roommates hit a gold mine. He found that Stella had been mentioned in a post by a very bitter ex, and the story was exactly what I needed to exact my revenge. Go to part 2. Dead name me in the workplace? I'll expose you back. Part 2 of 2. After Stella crudely stalked me on social media, discovered that I was a trans man used to present as female, and spread that news to the rest of our office, I knew that simply reporting her to human resources wouldn't be enough. I recruited my 3 roommates, and together, we unified to take her down. No social media account went unexplored, and finally, one of my roommates struck gold on a series of Facebook rants complaining about Stella. Apparently, she had cheated on an ex because the guy had cancer, and she wasn't satisfied with him anymore. The worst part is that she cheated on her ex with the ex's brother, rubbing extra salt in the wound. The guy that had cancer is no longer alive, unfortunately, but the Facebook rants he posted were more than enough. My roommates and I got together and formed a plan. We were going to put together a paper that showed all the Facebook ex's complaints against Stella, print out dozens of copies, and then sneak those copies into the mailboxes of the people in my company. Our mailboxes were on the first floor, so this wouldn't be too much of an issue. Moreover, my roommates knew that I would get in trouble if cameras showed me blatantly spreading gossip about an employee, so I got one of my roommates to offer to put the gossip sheets into the employee mailboxes instead. Within 2 days, the entire office had heard about what Stella had done. She took an entire week off from work. The day she got back, I leaned into her cubicle the same way she had dead-named me, and whispered the name of her ex. Then, I shrugged, and said that I was so sorry it had to happen this way. Obviously, that wasn't obvious enough for human resources to file a report against me, and Stella now turns red whenever I look at her. Good riddance. She really got what she deserved. My racist roommate threw out hundreds of dollars in Chinese ingredients, so I fought back. My college roommate has always been really weird around me and food. He constantly makes comments about me eating dogs, consuming weird insects, and having unhealthy amounts of salt. It was annoying in the beginning, but I've largely grown to ignore it, but he recently went too far. Basically, my parents recently went to China to visit our family. They asked me if there were any specific snacks I wanted brought back, since a lot of my favorite foods as a kid were only available in China. I gave them a pretty hefty list. 1 month later, I had 2 full drawers of my favorite snacks in the world. Keep in mind, all of these snacks were sealed. Nothing could have possibly caused a smell. The biggest inconvenience this caused my roommate was the time it took me to transfer the snacks from a big box to a drawer, and I did most of that when he was in the shower. He made a few snarky comments here and there when he saw me eating at night, but I didn't pay it any mind, until a few days ago, I opened my snack compartment only to find everything missing. At first, I thought that my roommate had moved things somewhere else. Then, I thought that maybe the resident advisor had confiscated my stuff since it was technically not made in America and not everything was FDA approved. But finally, I learned the truth. My roommate had gotten frustrated with me because of the smell, and so without ever complaining to me about it, he took the initiative to throw out the hundreds of dollars of Chinese snacks that my parents had bought for me. I was furious, but I was already plotting my revenge, and I knew exactly how to make my roommate sorry. Go to part 2. My racist roommate threw out hundreds of dollars in Chinese ingredients, so I fought back, of 2. After my roommate threw out all the snacks that my parents had brought back for me from China, I was furious. Not only was that my snack stockpile for the rest of the year, but he didn't even think to ask me before he went to such extremes. He just got annoyed, threw my food out, and thought everything would go back to normal. Well, I didn't think so. Keeping well in mind all the racist comments he had already made about me and my food habits, I decided to play into those to the fullest. I started placing mothballs all over the room, hiding them in pockets of his bags and corners of his drawers so that all his stuff would smell. Then, I also started playing Chinese meditation music during the day. Officially, this is allowed because quiet hours are only at nighttime in my dorm, but this really irked my roommate because his college philosophy meant that he partied all night and was always trying to nurse a hangover when I played this music. I also stopped going outside to take my calls to my parents. I began talking, loudly, in Mandarin to them on the phone on a nightly basis, usually while staring straight at my roommate. It's safe to say that my roommate was really bothered and uncomfortable by the end of the year. However, any attempts to complain to our resident advisor on me backfired because I had talked to the guy first, and our RA was firmly on my side. For the rest of the year, I made his life absolutely miserable in every way I could, unplugging his laptop when it was charging, hiding his room key, and blaring music. Long story short, don't piss off your roommate. I plan on doing way worse to this guy, even now.
Mother-in-law steals all my expensive purses and dresses, so I fought back. My mother-in-law has a really weird, really uncomfortable habit of dressing up as me. She has dyed her hair to my hair color, wears the same type of fashion jewelry that I wear, and she even started doing her nails after she discovered that I go to the salon to get them done every 2 weeks. I thought this was weird, but it never really bothered me until I realized that my mother-in-law had started taking my clothing, too. The other day, my husband and I were supposed to go out to dinner with his parents. I wanted to wear a specific black dress because I thought it would be the most appropriate for the venue, but I was stunned to find that it was completely missing from my closet. I went upstairs, since my husband's parents lived with us, and asked my mother-in-law explicitly if she had seen it. She just said, "Maybe you washed it, honey? You should be more careful." And she basically chastised me for it. Half an hour later, I was absolutely floored to see my mother-in-law wearing my dress with even my handbag. She looked absolutely radiant, while I looked frumpy next to her in a much less posh dress. I confronted her all the way to the restaurant, asking her why she was wearing my clothing and why she saw fit to lie to me about it. However, both my husband and his father said that I was making a big deal out of nothing, and that mothers and daughters share clothing all the time. The thing is, she's not my actual mother, and I don't owe her anything. So, I started plotting my revenge. Go to part 2. Mother-in-law steals all my expensive purses and dresses, so I fought back. Part 2 of 2. After I noticed a pattern where my mother-in-law would be constantly wearing my clothes, I started to get fed up. I told her explicitly that although this may be normal in her home, I was uncomfortable with sharing clothes. I also told her it was a little weird that dyed her hair to my color, did her nails the same way I did, and has even started wearing the same perfume. She just shrugged me off, saying that family is family, and that meant I had to share. So, for revenge, I decided to steal something my mother-in-law cared about to show her the frustration of having to share something that normal people wouldn't share. I planned a vacation just with my husband where we would go a few hours north, enjoy a nice 2 weeks in the mountains, and then drive back down. We were going to take our old beat-up Honda, but at the last minute, I loaded things into my mother-in-law's Porsche. Here's the thing, we left for the mountains in the early morning, and my hubby was basically asleep as we got into the car. He definitely didn't realize that I had him in his mom's Porsche, and I didn't bother to tell him. 3 hours later, my mother-in-law called me, screaming at me for taking her precious Porsche on a dangerous, bumpy road into the mountains. I just said, "What's wrong, Linda? Family and family, which means we have to share, right?" She hung up on me and called my husband, who was more than a little frustrated. Apparently his mom had an important work retreat that she wanted to attend in the Porsche, and I ruined her chance to make a good impression, but, honestly, I'm glad she'll finally know what it's like to lose something that matters. Serves her right.
My wife's friend answered the door in her underwear. The other day I, 35 male, had an odd encounter that I can't seem to shake from my mind. It involved my wife's close friend, 37 female, the mother of one of our child's friends. We've always maintained a cordial relationship with them, having attended several gatherings at each other's homes, and we've known each other for quite some time. However, the incident that occurred at their house was not one I expected. My son had accidentally left an item at their house, and being the closest, I was the one to retrieve it. It was just a casual day, nothing special, so I anticipated nothing more than a brief exchange and a return trip home. When I reached their home and knocked on the door, I was greeted by a sight that left me taken aback. The door was answered by my wife's friend, dressed only in her underwear and an open button-down shirt. It was a startling image, certainly not something I was prepared for, nor had I ever seen her in such a state before. Despite my visible surprise, she didn't seem flustered in the slightest. She ushered me inside without a second thought, not even bothering to adjust her barely buttoned shirt. It was as if my presence was of no consequence to her current state of undress. She then proceeded to retrieve the forgotten item from a desk. Rather than simply bending her knees or lowering herself slightly, she chose to bend over in a way that made her open shirt rise, revealing her bottom. It struck me as odd and unnecessary, given the item was on the desk, not on the floor. After handing me the item, she casually struck up a conversation about our plans for the day, seemingly attempting to prolong the interaction. I responded with politeness, but made it a point to keep my responses brief, eager to end the awkward encounter. The whole episode left me puzzled. Was the interaction intentional on her part? When I mentioned it to my wife, she dismissed it, saying, she probably thought I was going to pick it up. Don't flatter yourself yet. I can't help but feel that her friend's lack of alarm at my presence during her state of undress was unusual. I got the impression that her actions were deliberate, and her attempt to keep me there longer only added to my discomfort. As I continue to ponder over the incident, I can't help but think about what if the roles were reversed? What if it had been her husband in a similar state of undress with my wife as the unsuspecting visitor? I sincerely doubt I would have been comfortable with such a situation. The whole ordeal has left me with more questions than answers and a lingering sense of unease.
My cat, missing for 11 years, has been found. It's a miracle, and now they won't give him back. Back in 2012, my family and I moved to Oklahoma, bringing along our cherished feline friend, Shadow. He was just under 5 years old then. A mishap led to him escaping from our new home, and despite our relentless searching and holding on to hope, Shadow never returned. As the years passed, the painful realization settled in: Shadow was likely gone forever. Fast forward to 9 years later, a series of unfortunate events had us relocating back to my hometown. Among the aftermath of a devastating tornado, financial difficulties, and the struggle to get our lives back on track, an unexpected call brought a shimmer of hope into our lives. Shadow had been found. For the past 6 years, he had been living on a residential street, being fed by the locals, but never truly belonging to anyone. A recent encounter with some animal had left him needing minor medical attention, and that's when they discovered his chip, leading them straight to me. My joy was indescribable. After nearly a decade, my beloved cat had been found. The woman who had taken him to the vet was understanding of our financial situation, knowing that we couldn't make the trip to get him until the start of the next month. In the meantime, we pooled resources, scrimped, saved, and managed to scrape together enough funds to make the journey. But before I could bring Shadow home, I was hit with a shocking blow. Shadow had been given to another couple in the neighborhood. They had apparently fallen in love with him and decided to keep him. My attempts to contact them since have been met with silence. We had already mourned Shadow once, thinking him dead. Now, we were mourning him again, knowing he's out there but just out of our reach. This second loss is a devastating blow, one that makes our financial struggle seem insignificant in comparison. We'll recover financially eventually, but emotionally, this ordeal has left a lasting scar. Shadow, if only you knew how much you are loved and missed. We were so close to bringing you home, and it breaks my heart that we won't get to see you again. It's like losing you all over again, and it's a wound that may never fully heal.